In a cozy tavern, two men are engaged in an intense conversation. One is listening, the other is confidently explaining something important. The atmosphere is full of intrigue, as if time has stopped. The doors of the tavern swung open sharply, which did not go unnoticed by the other visitors. Rick entered the tavern. In the tavern, the bartender looks closely at the visitor. There is a bag on the table that has attracted everyone's attention. The atmosphere is tense, and everyone is waiting for further events. The bartender, with an evil look, hands the hero a sealed envelope, creating an atmosphere of mystery, while the hero accepts the invitation to a world of gambling and danger. Rick stands in the doorway of a mysterious gambling house, his face hidden in shadows, his eyes shining with determination, foreshadowing the exciting challenges ahead. Rick stands in the corner of the gambling house, clutching the invitation the bartender gave him. His attention is drawn to Lindsay. She says that the invitation is fake, a warning in her voice. The hero is puzzled, looking at the confident Lindsay, and wonders how she knew about the fake invitation. The tense silence and shadows around only emphasize his confusion. Rick's gaze fixates on the stranger with pink eyes, which captures his attention, making him forget about the fake invitation. Something in the bartender's gestures caught the hero's attention. An overly strained smile, a nervous movement of his hands. Rick felt doubt creeping through his consciousness. The bartender felt like he had been caught out with the invitation and instantly tensed up. Rick's gaze was full of suspicion, and a tense atmosphere began to build around him. The protagonist shouts to the crowd, "Hold him," and a group of people start moving towards the bartender. This creates an atmosphere of panic as the bartender tries to defend himself or escape. Rick again tries to find out from Lindsay how she knew that the invitation was fake. Lindsay evades the answer, but notices that the behavior of the bartender who tried to escape confirms that she is right. He tries to understand how the girl was able to recognize the fake from such a long distance. An awkward silence hangs in the air. The hero wonders if she could really notice the fake at first glance. Lindsay, smiling confidently, throws a glance in his direction, confirming her words. Rick looks puzzled that the ticket went to a regular person, which contradicts his understanding of how the arena works. And Lindsay, with a confident tone, contradicts his opinion, explaining that she herself saw signs of forgery. The protagonist was annoyed by Lindsay's contradictory answers. A large stack of documents lands on the table with a dull sound, and the boss seriously informs that all of this needs to be sorted out by the morning. Bexon looked at her boss in bewilderment, feeling anxiety and confusion fighting inside her, her expression reflecting a mixture of questions and uncertainty. In the quiet office, her boss, packing his things, told her that she needed to finish work before the morning. As he was leaving, the boss sarcastically told Bexon that he would be gone all day and asked her not to waste too much electricity, as it was the company's money. Before starting work, the heroine went to the store to buy 5 cans of energy drinks. She was depressed and tired. Entering the store, Bexon met an employee whom she had known all the time she had worked in the office. They greeted each other nicely. The acquaintance realized that the heroine was once again staying overtime. To this question, her face flushed slightly, and she, rubbing the back of her head and smiling shyly, answered, "It seems yes." Bexon took the desired 5 energy drinks for the night, for the routine work that awaited her in the office. At the same time, the employee asked the heroine about how work was going in the office. An acquaintance thoughtfully gives Bexon another can of energy drink as a token of gratitude for the fact that the heroine had previously treated her to snacks last time. With a sense of duty, she returned to the office and began working as she needed her contract to be renewed. Time passed, the last can of energy drink was drunk. She took a deep breath, feeling the tension slowly melt away after many hours of hard work. The office was silent except for the sound of her deep breaths. Bexon was disturbed by a ray of sun that hit her face. She was surprised that too much time had passed and the sunrise had already arrived. The view from the office window was attractive, so for some time she could not look away. And the heroine was also upset that she did not have time to sleep. Suddenly, the ringing silence is pierced by the sound of a notification from her phone, and she immediately remembers that she recently installed this game. She cast a dissatisfied glance towards the phone, thinking that she would never be able to sleep normally, and nevertheless decided to go into the game for a short while. The game was a distraction for her from the real world that weighed on her. Upon entering the game, she was plunged into a world of another universe, where a story is told of disasters and monsters that began to descend from the mountain ranges in the north and west. The main character of the game is a former farmer who became enraged after monsters destroyed his crops, and after that he decided to go to the mountains. Bexon played this game from time to time, and as a result, she was already level 11. She found it quite funny to watch her character grow and develop, while at the same time, Baeksun felt a sharp deterioration in her condition. The heroine was very surprised by what was happening. Since this had never happened to her before, her hands began to tremble, and cold sweat broke out all over her body. Her heart began to beat rapidly, which frightened her even more. The heroine had a sneaking guess that it could be due to the large amount of energy drinks. Suddenly, everything went dark before her eyes. Baeksun tried to calm herself down and call 911, but immediately it became difficult for her to breathe. She falls to the floor, thoughts running through her head that she really could die like this, from overwork at such a young age. The frightened heroine thought further, that if she had known that she would end up exactly like this, she would never have wasted her time. And in the last seconds of her life, she manages to make a wish in which she asks for the world to be destroyed. Suddenly, an entrance to the game appears. Baeksun no longer understands whether this is happening in reality or she is dreaming. The fusion of light and carelessness takes her to an unknown parallel world. She feels that she is no longer the same as before. Everything around her is different. The heroine froze in place and looked around for a long time. She noticed that people were dressed in strange clothes, but at the same time, this place seemed painfully familiar to her. The heroine noticed a merchant who was calling everyone to buy rare treasures from the north. Today was the day of the blue moon, and in honor of this, he made a good discount. On the other hand, she heard the next seller of pumpkin candies. They were selling them for only 1 coin, the heroine thought. Maybe it was a festival after all. But she continued to look around and noticed strange buildings around her. There were no modern houses. The people who surrounded her were dressed in medieval attire, and she was left wondering where she had ended up. The heroine also noticed countless system windows that were floating before her eyes. Lindsay stood as if spellbound. In the middle of the square, people were walking around her, who seemed not to notice her. There were also pop-up system windows around. It seemed that people did not notice them either. But then she was distracted by a sound that came from somewhere below. Lindsay froze, but still decided to lower her head. She looked down and saw a small gray rat creeping like a shadow along the cold stone road. The heroine was scared of the rat and in panic exclaimed, "A rat? What an abomination!" This moment shows her strong reaction to unexpected fear. At that very moment, she notices something strange, something she has never seen in her life. The rat had a pop-up window that said it was a Gray City rat. It was excited about the festival. It loved pies. Lindsay was very impressed that even a rat had its own system window. And at that very second, the heroine realizes that she has entered a game world. For her, it was impossible. The girl begins to understand that, trying to adapt to new conditions, she feels that behind every step in this virtual reality, there is a shadow of her lost life. Memories of the last minutes of her life begin to flash through her mind. Realizing that her body had left this world, a hellish shudder ran through her body, causing an unbearable cold inside. Lindsay also realized that during the process of her rebirth, she had awakened amazing abilities that contained unknown power. The heroine was surprised to realize that she had not only left the world, but had also been reborn in this amazing and mysterious place. The girl realized that her past life was full of torment and suffering, as if she was walking through hell, knowing neither peace nor light. In an instant, a pop-up window appears in front of Lindsay, informing her that the quest has begun. This window describes that for a player who goes through great trials and wishes for the world to be destroyed, the system will help create a destroyed world. The girl was faced with a mysterious and ambiguous task. She had to destroy the world, and for this she could become a god. This news shocked her, causing her to freeze for a moment in bewilderment. Confused thoughts raced through Lindsay's mind. She couldn't decide what all this could mean, and whether the program really had the right to order her to destroy the world. Lindsay's fearful look betrayed her inner worries, and the thought that this task arose from her last wish, for the entire world to be destroyed, did not give her exhausted mind any peace. The moment the girl realized that her words had been misunderstood, she tried to abandon the task, because having just found herself in this mysterious game world, she still did not fully understand how its rules worked. Every time she tried to refuse the task, persistent pop-ups appeared on the screen that assured her otherwise, making refusal impossible. Lindsay was overcome with frustration at not being able to refuse the task. She should have been dreaming about winning the lottery, not imagining the end of the world. She tried to calm herself down and began to reason. The reward is becoming a god. At first glance, it seemed to her that it sounded great. But is there any point in being a god when the world is destroyed and there are no people? The girl noted with bewilderment that although the system had a penalty line, nothing was said about the specific amount of sanctions for failure to complete the task, while the system itself was ready to offer assistance in completing it. Even now, she could clearly see the moment when her vision had faded, and the image still vividly surfaced in her thoughts, as if it remained an indelible shadow on her soul. The last moments of her life flashed before her eyes like a terrible dream, devoid of light and peace. Leaving a cold imprint of inescapable anxiety in her heart, she felt the fear of experiencing death again. Lindsay tried to think about how she could refuse the task, but she was in no hurry to make a decision because time had no limits, allowing her to wander forever in the labyrinth of thoughts. The girl came out of her thoughts and again began to carefully look around as if she was looking for something important in this familiar world. It still seemed amazing to her that every person and object in this world seemed to have pop-up windows hovering over them, revealing invisible stories and depths of existence. It seemed that the girl had turned into a wanderer, wandering around the world, drawn into an endless journey with no specific direction. But this could not go on forever, because this is her world, filled with dreams and hopes, where every step opens up new horizons. At first, Lindsay wandered the streets, getting to know how the system worked. She carefully observed how people interacted with each other, what rules governed their daily lives. The girl noticed an interesting detail. System windows do not open automatically. If you focus on a name or object, most of the time, they are barely noticeable. The heroine shares her thoughts about how unnecessary information coming through pop-up windows makes it difficult to perceive. This causes fatigue and the desire to turn off this function in order to focus on what is really important. On a sudden impulse, Lindsay threw away her pride and shouted, "Turn off!" Her voice sounded with a confidence that she did not expect from herself, but to her regret, nothing happened. The people on the street turned to look at her. The heroine involuntarily overheard a conversation between two girls who were discussing the mysterious fog that envelops the mountains and turns picturesque forests into abandoned landscapes, as if hinting at the oppression of nature. Lindsay suggested that it could be the Jundok disaster. The disaster appears at the beginning of the game, which only meant that everything happens before the start of the main plot. Based on everything that was happening around her, she concluded that she would simply use this ability to relax and enjoy life. In a second, a window with a new task appears. She needed to poison pumpkin candies. The reward for completing the task is 80 gold coins. The girl, believing that this was just a joke, began to carefully study the pop-up window with the hope of a new task. She was wondering if she should take on the mysterious pop-up tasks or if it was just someone's evil joke, when suddenly a voice from the crowd caught her attention. Lindsay turned around and began to carefully look at the crowd, trying to figure out who actually said those words. The purity and power of that voice made her head spin, and the girl couldn't help but wonder who this mysterious lady was. The question did not leave her alone, and the heroine, like an artist, began to delve into the details, carefully examining this mysterious figure from head to toe. Above the stranger's head, golden letters glittered in an exquisite golden window, identifying her as an important person surrounded by an aura of mystery and grandeur. The heroine stopped, overcome with surprise, when she saw in the window the name of Batilda Rohit Schroeder, Princess of Orgenia, marked as a potential candidate for the title of sovereign, and her heart was filled with feelings that she could hardly comprehend. The book in the princess's hands became the object of her attention, and Lindsay, realizing that it was Bourbon Rock's memoirs and that they were a fake, began to wonder whether she should intervene and report it. And while the heroine was thinking, she received a new task to approach Batilda and attract her attention. For completing the task, a reward of 600 gold coins was due. Lindsay was surprised by the size of the reward, because she didn't even have a penny. After thinking about the situation, she realized that there was no point in doubting anymore. The heroine listened with interest, as the seller described the book as a valuable relic, a unique item that could not be found anywhere else. The seller also mentioned that the original copy was worth 8,000 gold coins, but today the price of this item is only 200 gold coins. Lindsay walked confidently towards the princess, already preparing to address her to get her attention and inform her about the fake. Suddenly, a young man approached her, silent and mysterious, and unexpectedly filled the girl with fear. The heroine raised her head and, meeting the gaze of the young man, noticed a pop-up window above his head. It was Dominic Quito, Batilda's royal guard. Lindsay finally decided to call out to Batilda, asking if she was going to buy it. The princess was considering the purchase, and she cared little whether the diary was genuine. Its true value would only be realized after Sophus's appraisal. The seller, confirming Batilda's words, added that the most exciting thing about the Blue Moon Fair is the thrilling search for hidden treasures. The merchant continued his story, mentioning the famous story of a girl who bought a strange ring at a low price, but soon discovered that it contained a real diamond. The girl thought about the merchant's words, imagining how an unexpected find could change her life, making her heart tremble with excitement and hope for the best. Lindsay came to the conclusion that if she could acquire this amazing ability, then today would be her chance to achieve great success. But she had a stumbling block. The heroine didn't have enough money. The princess approached Lindsay with a question about the memoirs, wondering if she would like to buy them. She thought about it, because it could be a fairy tale adventure, but she did not have enough money. Above all, the girl tried to focus on the task and the gold. Every little thing mattered, and she couldn't allow herself to be distracted. Lindsay gave Batilda a negative answer because she did not want to buy a fake. She knew that real things were worth their money and was not ready to take a risk by buying something questionable. Batilda, with genuine surprise, turned to the girl and asked whether the memoirs were really false. The heroine confidently confirmed the question asked because the ink in the book remained fresh and juicy. The princess was not convinced by Lindsay's arguments, and her eyes still showed doubt, full of determination and independence. The girl was puzzled by the unexpected outcome of events that changed her familiar world. Lindsay noticed a pop-up window in the book that said the spine of the memoir was secured with Marani glue, which kept the edges white. She tried to convince Batilda of the book's authenticity by telling her that its spine was bound with Marani glue. The princess glanced at the book, began to examine it thoughtfully. Doubts and curiosity flashed in her eyes. The girl also continued to talk about how if the book had been real, the spine would have been glued using traditional methods of the time. The craftsman would have skillfully selected the leather and paper, creating not just an object, but a work of art. Lindsay's speech was interrupted when she stopped in front of the mirror and saw her pop-up window. It stated that the girl was an apostle who would lead the world to ruin. The heroine felt confused and anxious inside, like a storm shaking her heart, forcing her to think about the upcoming changes. Batilda noticed that Lindsay was confused, and her thoughts, like birds, flew far from the present moment, plunging her into the world of her own experiences. The girl raised her head sharply, frightened, and began to look around the merchant's counter as if she was looking for something special. Her gaze seemed to float over all the items that the merchant had, but her gaze fell on only one item that she had been looking for a long time. It was an enamel egg, a masterpiece by Master Pavla, of which there are only 50 on the continent. The salesman leaned towards the girl in bewilderment. Perhaps he wanted to ask her a question, but his eyes expressed only genuine curiosity. Lindsay ran a little away from the merchant to Batilda in order to convey the information that this egg must be the work of the craftsman Pavla. She tried to speak quietly so as not to attract unnecessary attention, but there was a slight anxiety in her voice. Taking a deep breath, she began to explain that this particular master was famous for his unique products. At that moment, Batilda interrupted the girl, asking why she needed this story about the egg. Her voice sounded displeased, and Lindsay felt that the information provided did not arouse the necessary interest. The princess herself continued the story that if this egg is genuine, then it is worth 1.5 million gold. Lindsay thought about how big of a sum that was, of course. It was impossible to miss out on this artifact. The possibility that the egg would be more than just a collectible was too high. The heroine looked at the pop-up window again. It indicated that due to its high rarity, the artifact cost about 2 million gold. This amount was spinning in her head, causing a storm of emotions. The girl did not have money to buy the relic, and it occurred to her that she could offer to make the purchase to Batilda. Batilda, a noblewoman with good connections and wealth, might be interested in such a rarity. The heroine thought with embarrassment that the princess was too perceptive. At the Blue Moon Fair, even on such wretched stalls as these, one can find national treasures. It is surprising that the fair has acquired such proportions, exclaimed Batilda. This fact did not surprise Lindsay much. In her opinion, the fair was supposed to grow. A huge crowd of people, overflowing stalls stretching to the end of the street, coins and notes changing hands. A huge network of cash transactions, Lindsay reasoned. The heroine felt a surge of joy and self-confidence. Now she had enough funds to plan her next adventure. She completed the task for which she received a reward. Batilda stood there, filled with indignation, unable to comprehend what had caused the girl's sudden joy, as if a bright ray of sunshine had broken through the gloomy clouds of their common plan. The girls continued their conversation about the fair and money, and in this dialogue, Lindsay suddenly asked if the royal family had any funds that they were trying to launder. The princess was a little outraged by this question and asked to keep it to herself. At the same time asking the girl's name, the heroine introduced herself. "I am Lindsay Rethor." Batilda was surprised by the fact that the girl decided to introduce herself, as she thought that she would try to hide her name. Lindsay felt anxious and plunged into the chaos of her own thoughts, trying to make sense of the flow of emotions. Batilda presented the heroine with a beautiful brooch for useful information and asked her to come to the Leventor Palace. At the entrance, you need to ask for Dominic Quito. He will lead her to the princess. Batilda, filled with hope, eagerly awaited an encouraging reply from Lindsay. The heroine was surprised by the princess's offer and agreed, but deep down she knew that she would never go there. After all, Batilda hires only talented people with high salaries and demands difficult work from them. The princess was discussing with her guard a completely unexpected event that she had to face. Without inquiring into what happened next, the guard wondered if Lindsay had been rewarded too generously, while for Batilda this sum was a trifle. In addition, given that her name is Lindsay Rethor, this can be considered a kind of repayment of a debt before a possible connection. But the young people were distracted from their conversation by the click of an antique that sounded somewhere nearby. The egg she had bought at the fair blossomed into a magnificent lily, and the princess, laughing, realized that her debt to the heroine was approximately 1.69 million gold coins. Reder is a forgotten name, and yet her daughter has only just appeared, causing Batilda to reflect deeply on how fate sometimes intertwines destinies across generations. The princess readily decided to look after Lindsay Rethor because her mother was well known to her and left bright memories of her past. The girl thought about the generosity of the princess, who generously bestowed almost 800 gold coins on which Lindsay could live comfortably for a whole month. As she looked at the bag of gold, the girl suddenly realized that she had become covered in dust from wandering around the city during the day, and that she urgently needed to plunge into the freshness of the waters. While the heroine was restoring her purity and freshness of thoughts, something unusual caught her attention. Lindsay suddenly discovered a scar on her body that she had never noticed before, and the mystery of its origin intrigued her. While bathing, the girl tried to put her thoughts about this world and the questions concerning Lindsay in order, further reasoning that this world is not exactly a game. She also considered the fact that luxury items, such as soap, which was commonly used by the nobility, could easily be purchased at the hotel. The next argument was that the life of a woman named Lindsay Rethor seems so turbulent and restless that it seems as if she is constantly on the verge of colliding with fate. She was deep in thought about the large cross-shaped scar on her chest, which, like a mark of fate, left a shadow of mysterious experiences in her soul. Then, immersed in the memories of the past day, the heroine tried to understand where the princess could have information about Lindsay, and this question tormented her mind. The only ability granted to the heroine was the ability to read, a simple, but for her already such a significant skill that opened up limitless horizons. The girl wanted to say that with this opportunity, she could definitely make a fortune, and she no longer had to humiliate herself with contract work. Lindsay, using the system window, decided to take an important step. She chose the path of a doctor, striving to find her calling in serving people. She had a well-thought-out plan to become a doctor. This profession will always be in demand. Although the girl did not yet have sufficient knowledge in medicine, she was confident that the system windows would support her on this path. As expected, the system window responded readily to Lindsay's requests. If the need arose, she could become a doctor, and then her life would be filled with prosperity and confidence in the future. The girl was brought back from her thoughtful reflections to reality by a conversation between two guys at the next table who were discussing Rethor. Lindsay approached the young men with a question about a free minute, and although the guys did not have time, their curiosity about what exactly the girl wanted to ask was clearly aroused. She decided to ask the young men what they knew about Rethor, and the boys were amazed that the girl knew about Baron Rethor. Embarrassed, she quietly ordered the most expensive dish on the menu. The girl, with slight sadness, shared her naive view of the world with the men, explaining that this is precisely why she was seeking their wise advice. Once upon a time, there lived a sage associated with Baron Reder. It was said that the sage sees through everything and knows no boundaries. However, the sage still remained a man. When death approached, he left a last wish. He wanted the sage to appear again in Reder the day before his death. Upon hearing this news, the royal family made an agreement with them. In exchange for the royal family's financial support for the Baron, they agreed to accept the sage when he was born. Despite numerous efforts, the sage never appeared. Eventually, the royal family refused to support Baron Rethor. The current Baron protested vehemently, but was not listened to. The Baron then died suddenly of shock, and his wife reportedly went away somewhere. Lindsay asked the men if they had children. The guy said that they had only one daughter, but they did not know if everything was okay with her. The girl was happy and thanked the men for the story. She concluded that this only daughter was already here. Taking the pumpkin candy in her hands, she meditatively bit into it, immersing herself in the thoughts of the story she had heard, as if each taste reminded her of the magic of a fairy tale. Lindsay Rethor, a fallen aristocrat, was a living illustration of how even the most brilliant life can be destroyed to the ground. The girl came to another conclusion. The sage's ability to see through everything is similar to her own gift, revealing the depths of human nature. She was overcome by an uneasy feeling that one day someone might discover her secret gift of a sage, and then the princess would take it by force as something valuable and inaccessible. Frightened, Lindsay reflected on how she was once again at a crossroads in her old life and had only just managed to break free from the chains of 10 years full of troubles. Shuddering from the painful memories, she didn't even want to remember her past life filled with endless night shifts. By throwing away the candy, she seemed to be freed from the shackles of her past life, leaving behind bitter memories and opening the door to new beginnings. Lindsay decided to give up on her dream of becoming a doctor because the fear that she might be tasked with spreading the plague or something similar was like a powerful shadow overshadowing her aspirations. The next step was a pawn shop, but she was refused, followed by a jewelry store, also a no-go. The girl, rejected by all employers, continued to look for work with an open heart, striving for a new opportunity to realize her dreams. Finding a job turned out to be more difficult than she thought, and the heroine didn't understand where to go next. Walking along the old streets, Lindsay suddenly felt something catch her eye. There was a sign under her feet calling everyone to the new Sophis appraisal office. The advertising leaflets say that the office will value anything for money, from a stone picked up on the street to valuable national treasures. Some objects in this world possessed a frightening mystery and hidden danger, their true nature remaining difficult to discern and enigmatic. With this judgment, Lindsay came to the conclusion that mages were still needed because it required the use of mana for evaluation. She didn't need anything like that. Even though she lacked mana, the girl had excellent capabilities instead. The heroine, frozen in place, consoled herself with the thought that she would still get a job. Lindsay walked into a room filled with people, each immersed in their own activity, and in this united chorus of presence, there reigned a surprising conciseness and harmony. The atmosphere was bustling with activity, and the employee, like a skilled conductor, deftly served customers one after another, creating an atmosphere of harmonious rhythm. The surroundings reminded her of quiet banking operations, where every movement created an atmosphere of strict harmony and concentration. While Lindsay was deep in thought, a staff member quietly approached her and kindly asked if she needed any help. The girl shared her desire to find a job, and in response, the employee asked with interest whether she would like to know about the reputation of the company she intends to work for. The heroine, showing no interest in the company's reputation, surprised the employee, who in response informed her that the recruitment of new appraisers had been suspended. The bureau employee glanced nervously at Lindsay, thinking that in situations like this, he should immediately throw such people out the door. He glanced at her appraisingly, noting the simplicity of Lindsay's clothing, but her hair shone so brightly that, observing her behavior, he saw in her a surprising nobility. At the same time, Lindsay admired the bureau employee's clothes. They were so elegant that it seemed as if they were custom-made in the best workshop. The girl also noticed that the employee smoked and that he also had a dog, and she concluded that it would be better to quit smoking for the sake of the pet. Such a deep analysis greatly surprised the employee, and he froze, covered in cold sweat. Looking at the girl, he became immersed in thoughts about what could be hidden behind her mysterious smile. Having kindly asked the girl to wait a bit, the employee disappeared into the office to convey important information to senior management. In the office filled with soft light, a beautiful girl was standing, the deputy head of the guild, when a subordinate entered the room and, slightly hesitating, called out to her. She turned around sharply, and sparks of bewilderment and curiosity played in her eyes. An employee informed Eliza that someone had come to apply for a job as a consultant. The surprised girl said that the period for recruiting new appraisers had already ended. The subordinate was very uncomfortable sharing this information, but this case was special, so he invited Eliza to see for herself. She was so shocked by the realization that this was a special occasion that her impatience only grew with every second of waiting, and she glanced at the door, dreaming of finding out who was hiding behind it. Eliza asked curiously to be taken to this unique person, as if anticipating a meeting with something truly amazing. A confused Lindsay stood in the hallway, impatiently waiting for the employee to appear, as if searching the walls of the building for some kind of comforting thread. Standing on the balcony, Eliza watched the heroine with bewilderment, as if she were meeting something magical and mysterious on the horizon that promised amazing stories. Taking out a pendulum that could detect an opponent's magical power, the girl pointed it towards Lindsay for a full check. The pendulum was mesmerizing in its beauty. Its edges sparkled impressively in the sun's rays, like little stars that had fallen to the earth. When the magic is detected, the pendulum should swing, but when it was pointed at Lindsay, the pendulum remained in place, which greatly surprised Eliza. The Vice Guild leader was taken aback by the fact that the pendulum did not react at all, since her subordinate had said that this was a special case. The submissive employee admitted with a slight sigh that perhaps he had made a mistake in thinking through every step of his choice. Elsa bitterly realized that the whole situation had been a waste of time and, without hesitation, asked to be taken back. She had hoped that Lindsay would turn out to be a sorceress, but disappointment overcame her when reality revealed the stranger's true face. The girl stood in front of a magical object. Enclosed behind transparent glass, all other items were fakes, but this cup radiated true power and mystery. Surprised, Eliza watched the heroine with bated breath, unable to understand how she had managed to unmistakably distinguish the only genuine copy. Calling out to Lindsay, the girl excitedly asked her to evaluate the item immediately, as if the outcome of an important matter was being decided right now. Eliza, listening with trepidation to every moment, eagerly awaited an answer from her heroine, as if a whole universe of possibilities were hidden behind this word. All the people in the building fell silent nervously, as if expecting a fateful turn of events. A man stood hurriedly at the counter, his voice shaking with emotion as he asked for an appraisal of the ring, as if time was against him. Clutching his head, he could no longer listen to the girl, like a parrot, repeating the same thing over and over again. The man, overcome with nervousness, persistently asked about the approximate cost of the ring, but the employee, frightened by his expectations, only remained silent in confusion, unable to voice even an approximate amount. Lindsay watched the whole situation with interest. Her curiosity was aroused by the mysterious thing, and she decided to examine what attracted such close attention. Coming closer, the girl realized with bated breath that the ring with the magnificent demantoid had been stolen. Lindsay saw a window above the stranger. It was indicated that the merchant was addicted to gambling, and also had a bad habit of stealing. After diagnosing the man, she realized why the merchant was in such a hurry, but a theft report had already been filed. A plan matured in her head that she could use this man to attract the attention of the people she needed. The employee continued to tell the man that she could not evaluate the ring by eye, but the merchant was persistent. Lindsay quietly approached the man from behind, and he turned around, confused, wondering who this mysterious miss was. With a daring gleam in her eyes, the girl stepped closer and, unable to resist, asked if the ring had been stolen. The man was taken aback, shouting that it was a family heirloom. His face showed that he was scared, but the girl knew that the company had recently reported the theft of something. The heroine, full of determination, asked the merchant to prove that this ring was not an object of theft. The merchant, realizing that his plans had been discovered, attempted to break free with the ring, pushing the girl in a desperate attempt to escape. Without a second thought, Lindsay tripped him up and the merchant fell with a crash, dropping the ring, which landed right in front of Eliza, who bent down and picked it up with trepidation. The guards grabbed the man, who, trying to resist, struggled with all his might to escape from their strong hands. Eliza asked the heroine if she was sure of her judgment about the theft, and Lindsay answered in the affirmative. She immediately asked that the man be handed over to the security service. Grateful, Eliza approached the girl and thanked her with sincere gratitude for saving them from such an unpleasant situation. Looking at the stranger, Eliza could not help but be amazed at her extraordinary insight. This woman recognized the authenticity of the object at first glance and figured out that it had been stolen. The girl offered Lindsay a position as an appraiser in their office, and without a second thought, she happily agreed. The heroine felt joy that everything was developing exactly as she had planned. They entered Eliza's office and asked her subordinate to bring tea, preparing for a long and fascinating conversation. Eliza expressed her sincere gratitude to Lindsay for everything that had been done previously, adding that there are many such people these days. The heroine was amazed at how easily people turn stolen things into money by getting involved in the world of illegal games. Eliza continued to talk enthusiastically about the capital, emphasizing that all forces were deployed to protect the palace. Serious gaps remained in the capital's security system. As a result, there were even more thieves. The number of players is also growing, which leads to an increase in the number of illegal gaming halls. Arriving for an inspection, the heroes realized that they were too late here too. As if waking up from a trance, the subordinate, with surprise in his eyes, asked what they should do next. Dressed in dark robes, 3 figures stood at the threshold of a secret den where illegal gambling flourished as a backdrop. The Duke thought about what was happening and suggested that the first thing to do was to leave this place. Like ghosts, people emerged from the abandoned house, and the Duke, with a slight hint of impatience, asked his subordinates about the origin of those distributing invitations. A subordinate informed Rick that mysterious invitations were being sold in some tavern. They are currently investigating it. Rick was lost in thought. There must be some secret code to get an invitation. There was very little time left, and searching for taverns was the only chance in this race against time. Lindsay wondered if she had understood correctly that the Emperor was turning a blind eye to the security measures in the capital. Eliza confirmed her words. An intoxicating aroma filled the air as the subordinate placed the aromatic tea in front of them. There were 3 teapots in front of the girls, and the hospitable Eliza suggested choosing any of them. Like a magnet, the middle teapot attracted Lindsay because it contained a spark of true origin view. Eliza liked the girl's answer and continued her test to see how accurately she could estimate objects. She handed Lindsay a jar of Wujong Ashu tea leaves and asked her to tell her a little about them. After reading the pop-up window above the tea jar, she asked if these were really Wujong Ashu tea leaves, as the description was completely different. Eliza was taken aback by the answer, as she was not sure that these were the same tea leaves, and then came the question that had been bothering her so much: was she a magician? The girls continued their dialogue, with Lindsay asking if she needed a license to work, to which she responded negatively. Realizing that Eliza's hesitation had not disappeared, the heroine leaned on the table for balance and stood up, declaring her abilities. Indignation filled her, but not a single word left her lips, and the girl, annoyed, silently looked at Lindsay. Moving away, the girl said that she was one of those people who couldn't stand unnecessary movements. There was a hidden irony in Eliza's words when she offered to prove her qualifications, causing a deathly silence in the room. The girl was telling Lindsay about the objects that were in the office, interrupting the story. The heroine said that it was all fake, which took Eliza by surprise. The conclusion was obvious. Lindsay was not a magician or an appraisal specialist. She assumed that the girl was a sage. Horror, with icy claws clinging to her heart, made her freeze, unable to utter a word. The fear that her identity might be revealed hung in the air, but she still decided to trust Eliza. A premonition tormented Lindsay. Her mind was full of thoughts that getting to know her better could open Pandora's box. With a slight smile, she introduced herself as Lindsay Rethor, revealing her name as a secret. The girl bowed and introduced herself in response: Eliza Barrett, Deputy Guildmaster in Sophist's office. The confused girl was embarrassed that a person of such a high rank was talking to her like that. With every word, their conversation became more meaningful, and the talk continued with renewed vigor. Eliza, a little embarrassed, admitted to herself that she had not quite understood the message of Lindsay's words, as if she had run into an invisible wall. The girl was just a stranger whose story had just begun in this place, and she was looking for work as the first step on a new path. The girl recognized these words as a call for her to hide Lindsay's identity. A storm of contradictions raged in her soul. She looked somewhere, struggling with confusion, and did not know what to do. The Baron Rethor family had failed the test and had fallen into disgrace, which explained why they had not gone to the Imperial Palace. And besides, if Lindsay worked in Sophis, it would be a huge advantage. The news about the impossibility of their working together sounded to the heroine like a sad melody that was cut off at the most interesting moment. Lindsay immediately decided to use her ability, asking if Eliza had been having a lot of problems lately. Extending her hand to the girl, the heroine offered to become her deputy, taking all the headaches upon herself. A fire of thoughts flared up in Eliza's soul. She froze like a statue, unable to utter a word, thinking about the possibility of the sage reading her thoughts. She does have a problem item. It was a box made over 200 years ago. As if reading her mind, Lindsay asked the girl how much the box cost. A fire of hope flared up in Eliza's soul, and she began to think about how to make up for the loss. The girl set the conditions that if Lindsay appreciated this item, she would hire her at Sophis. The black blindfold that Eliza held out in her hands seemed to be calling into the unknown, creating an aura of mystery. For safety's sake, Lindsay had to wear a blindfold as their path lay in a top-secret part of Sophis. It was probably this level of meticulousness that made her the deputy guildmaster of Sophis. The system window informed her of this. Lindsay's normal field of vision was like an ocean full of strange treasures, where every observation was a pearl of useful information. Lindsay's current field of vision was blurry. Due to her eyes being blindfolded, there was no useful information. The girls walked along the corridors of Sophis, their steps measuring the rhythm of a mysterious journey. The journey was long, and unable to bear it any longer, Lindsay asked how much longer they would have to walk. Taking off her mask, the girl saw a place that exceeded all her expectations, and surprise, complete delight, and admiration shone in her eyes. The room was a large, darkened room. In the center, there was a cage with a box. There were many times fewer people in this room. Lindsay began to look at the box closer. In the pop-up window, she read that it was a cursed box that could drive a person crazy at the slightest touch. As if on different shores, the girls, keeping a decent distance from the cage, discussed the mysterious, ominous box. Lindsay made a logical chain. The mysterious box could be approached closer to examine, but when touched, Eliza once went crazy. Stepping towards the cage, the heroine, overcoming her fear, was faced with a warning. A pop-up window lit up with a message that Lindsay had entered a dangerous zone. At that very moment, the heroine's chest was gripped by unbearable pain, and she began to choke. Her breathing became convulsive and intermittent. As if on cue, noticing the trouble, those around quickly rushed to the girl, ready to help and save her. Dying again as senselessly as last time was the heroine's greatest fear. Her soul was tormented by doubt and horror. The pop-up window appears again, notifying about the difficulty setting, and Lindsay doesn't understand what's happening at the moment. The spell, like a dark cloud, dispersed under the onslaught of the player, and like a bird escaping from a cage, the girl again gained the ability to breathe freely. Concerned, Eliza approached the girl and tenderly asked if everything was okay, as if she wanted to share the warmth of her heart. She could not understand what was happening around her, and this world seemed mysterious and unfamiliar to her, as if shrouded in fog. Eliza wondered if a sage could even have such powers. The longer Eliza looked at Lindsay, the more charming she became. She became absorbed in her thoughts about the words she had spoken, as if trying to unravel their secret meaning, and her thoughts were enveloped in a soft web of deep analysis. The heroine, full of curiosity and excitement, decided to open the mysterious box to find out what secrets and treasures were kept in its depths, as if she was going to lift the veil of the unknown. Inside is the sphere of the Ghost King. He was cursed with plague and madness. If the ball is buried in the ground, the earth will wither. Those around were amazed to the depths of their souls, unable to contain their surprise at what appeared before their eyes. And again, a pop-up window appeared with a new task. The girl had to bury the sphere in the ground to desecrate the earth and force the goddess to leave this world. Lindsay decided not to go through the quest to destroy the world and told the whole truth to Eliza. The girl found a way to help remove the spell. She needed to find a fang, a wheel, and a candle. The girls standing nearby were enthusiastically leafing through the archives, looking for new ways to free themselves from the magic spell. Eliza found a method by which the seal could be broken, and the girl immediately ordered it to be done. Everyone present in the hall already intuitively knew what they had to do. Each of them was determined to remove the curse from the magical sphere. Having collected all the necessary attributes, the girl boldly removed the spell from the cursed object, but doubts were growing in her soul. At that very moment, a spirit burst out of the ominous box, as if freed from centuries of imprisonment. The magical light, like a bright comet, blinded everyone in the hall, causing them to freeze in surprise and admiration. Lindsay stood there dumbfounded, not believing her eyes, because this outcome of events was a complete surprise to her. The girl was in complete shock, realizing that only one of the 7 seals was broken. Having calmed her worries, the heroine began to encourage Eliza in a friendly manner, assuring her that there was no need to panic, only that the remaining seals needed to be removed. A disconcerted Eliza was stunned to discover that the seal was not the only one. Taking Lindsay's hand in admiration, the girl looked straight into her eyes, full of unexpected light and sincerity. She exclaimed that this was a truly revolutionary discovery that could change the way we view the world. No one had ever managed to break the seal, but Lindsay not only overcame this amazing barrier, but was also able to determine exactly how many of them were left. Delighted subordinates congratulated him on a job well done and genuine insight, admiring the leader's ability to lead the team to success. The girl watched in bewilderment as her joyful colleagues enthusiastically congratulated each other, since all their successes were achieved thanks to her hard work. The girl's eyes sparkled with success and gratitude. This antique could be sold for a decent amount. Lindsay was lost in dark thoughts, her heart aching with sadness and depression. Eliza apologized to the girl with genuine regret. realizing that her thoughts had momentarily carried her away from the conversation. After long trials and hardships, the heroine was finally hired at Sophus's office, and her dream began to come true. The girl asked with slight doubt whether they should first do some important thing, to which Eliza asked with interest what exactly she meant. Lindsay, dreaming about the future, was anxious to know the salary level, because the salary is not just a number on paper, but the key to her independence. The girls retreated to a secluded corner of the office to discuss the nuances of the vacancy. They quietly exchanged opinions on the requirements and working conditions. The girl was happy with the conditions that were described. She felt that this was what she was looking for: a comfortable schedule, interesting tasks, and a friendly atmosphere in the team. Another bonus from the office was a comfortable dormitory. This was an excellent offer, because the girl had long dreamed of her own space where she could concentrate on work. Enjoying the wonderful schedule from 10 in the morning until 4 in the evening, the heroine with a slight smile dove behind the office doors, full of anticipation of a new working day. And most importantly, Lindsay managed to sign a contract that promises her an impressive salary of 30,000 gold. However, after the negotiations, Eliza felt dissatisfied and deceived. She thought that Lindsay was just a sheltered young lady, but the moment they sat down at the negotiating table, everything changed in her demeanor. From the moment Lindsay sat down at the negotiating table, she became a completely different person. At first, she was not satisfied with the salary level that was initially offered to her. Then Eliza tried to put pressure on the girl, stating that no other workplace offered such exceptional benefits. Lindsay was also warned about overtime, which greatly surprised the girl, and she refused such contract conditions. Eliza never wanted to exploit the lady, but simply wanted to make a deal more profitable for Sophus. The girl sat in thought for an indefinite period of time. She met many aristocrats, but Lady Linksy was on another level. She was both polite and confident, exuding grace and strength in every word. Lindsay had a keen sense of smell and unwavering composure, and could instantly assess a situation and respond to it with precision and force. The negotiations were concluded thanks to the impeccable manners of the participants, which contributed to achieving mutual understanding and a positive outcome for all parties. The girl was glad that the negotiations led them to a mutually acceptable agreement and promised to work hard for Sophus's growth. She began to suspect that they might risk running afoul of the royal family, but they would have to find a way to hide it. But before that, Eliza had unfinished business that required her attention, and she knew it needed to be resolved before moving on. It had also been a long time since she had contacted the guildmaster. The guildmaster is the most important person in Sophus's office, an important person on whose decisions much depends. He needs to convey information that someone has recognized the overflowing cup. Ordinary people passing by stopped noticing what or who was next to them. Meanwhile, the letter written by Eliza had already reached the recipient by pigeon post. The guildmaster was interested in information about Lindsay and decided to gather the necessary information to understand how she could affect the work of the office. He was glad that he could see her in person. Meeting the girl was an important moment for him, as he hoped to discuss some ideas. A new day began, and Lindsay, inspired, sitting at her workplace, did not stop dreaming. She imagined how she would implement her ideas and achieve her goals. Now it was just a matter of time before she accumulated wealth, and she didn't know what to do with the salary she had just received. Suddenly, something distracted her from her dreams and thoughts, until something incomprehensible appeared in the corner of her vision. Two charming girls, like spring flowers, approached the heroine, and she tried with lively interest to unravel their mysterious faces. She remembered one of the girls. It was an office employee. Her name was Agnes. The second girl next to her was Lara. Lindsay didn't understand what was going on and why the two girls came up to her. As it turned out, they came up to thank her for her help in investigating the theft incident. As a token of gratitude, the girl wanted to treat her to some amazing apple wine this evening. The girl again plunged into the depths of her mind, thinking about the fact that she had been in a new world for a long time, but had never tried alcohol. She found herself thinking back to her past life of going to corporate dinners, always feeling left out. And now, as she considered the possibility of saying yes, she wondered if she should reopen that door to a world where she wasn't quite herself. Still, she decided to go with the girls, and their happy faces instantly made her choice the right one. They were happy and were choosing a time for further meeting. The girls agreed to meet in a pub for 6 people, which reminded her of the 6 energy drinks she drank in her past life. She was curious as to why the name seemed strange. Perhaps there was some deep meaning hidden in it, but she didn't attach any importance to it. Entering the pub, Lindsay looked around and realized that there were quite a lot of people there. She assumed that it was a popular place. Agnes followed her into the tavern and began looking for her new acquaintance. The girl was very scared and worried, to which Lindsay asked what happened. Fear clenched Agnes's throat, making it feel like every word was hanging in the air. But having collected her thoughts, she screamed. Lyra disappeared. These words bursting from her chest shocked everyone who surrounded her. Agnes said that the girls were walking down the street together. Lyra suddenly turned into an alley and disappeared. She had heard stories before that this was the place where people disappeared. Lindsay tried to calm her new acquaintance, although she herself could not calm her panic, and asked her to tell the story more slowly. While Agnes was trying to tell what happened, the heroine was distracted by a new window that appeared in front of her. She noticed the bartender. He was part of Magdala's illegal gambling ring. He looked worried after hearing about the disappearance. The girl thought about what to do next. She couldn't act too rashly. It could have unpleasant consequences. Another man entered the tavern. He was wearing a long black cloak. After the door slammed, everyone turned their attention to him. Lindsay saw a familiar face and felt her heart beat faster. Those eyes, those features. She couldn't be mistaken. It was Grand Duke Rick Redham, known for his exceptional swordsmanship and striking appearance. She saw a golden window above Rick. It meant only one thing. He is also an important person like the princess. Moreover, he is connected with the investigation of a criminal group. Lindsay needed to get information from him. The heroine, patting Agnes on the shoulder, tried to calm her down. Agnes still looked worried, but her friend's words began to work. She nodded, despite her doubts. The girl didn't have time to explain everything. She just asked to do as she said. Agnes stood there, embarrassed, feeling guilty towards Lindsay, and she felt like she could have supported her friend better. But still, the girl decided to leave the tavern. She went to the police station, not knowing what Lindsay had planned. She was thinking about her next plan of action. The girl understood that time was against her. Lyra could be in danger, and she needed to act quickly. Lindsay watched the Duke and the bartender, trying to hear the conversation. Even the smallest details were important to her. Having pulled the hood over herself, she hoped that no one would notice or recognize her. The girl was very worried. The heroine looked at every detail, trying to grasp every tiny detail. Seeing the bottle of wine, she read the window on the object. The bottle of wine was a cheap imitation for distributing counterfeit tickets. Under the bottle was the same counterfeit ticket. The girl realized that she had found what she was looking for: inner peace and harmony, which had long been lost in the endless bustle of life. She needed to approach Rick and start a conversation somehow to get all the necessary information. Lindsay leaned gently against the bar, trying to gather her thoughts to tell the Duke about the fake ticket. As Rick started to leave, the girl kept shouting after him that the ticket was fake. Rick was taken aback, turning towards the girl. He was interested in what else she could tell him. With a questioning look, he waited for at least one more word from the girl, but the girl froze and stood silently. Slowly, Lindsay continued, "This thing in Rick's hands is fake." Reaching out her hand towards Rick, she again froze in silence, waiting for some kind of reaction from the Duke. The young man was very interested in this information, took off his hood and came closer to the girl. He asked Lindsay to share more information about what she knew. The girl looked at the Duke. He was incredibly handsome, as expected, because this is a fantasy world. It seemed to the young man that the heroine was holding an intriguing pause, but she was simply looking at the information about him in the pop-up window. He called out to her because the pause had been too long, and Lindsay came back to life and continued her story. Rick looked at the girl suspiciously. He didn't understand why she shared this information about the fake with him. Lindsay shared that she needed help finding her friend, as she had been kidnapped and sent to an illegal arena. Scary thoughts were swirling in my head, since it was unknown what they could have done with the kidnapped people. The young man looked slightly nervous. His hands were shaking slightly, and his eyes were darting around in search of reassurance. It was unfortunate, but Rick couldn't act rashly based on uncertain information. Lindsay was ready to do anything to save her friend, offering the Duke help in return. This surprised him greatly, because such a fragile and gentle girl could not participate in dangerous operations. The Duke understood everything perfectly, all the girl's worries about her friend, but he could not drag the noblewoman into a dangerous situation. The girl realized that he needed to know the location of the illegal arena. He wondered if there was any benefit to this deal, and whether the girl could really help him. Rick, having considered all the pros and cons, proposed his terms of the deal. Putting on the hood of the robe, he told Lindsay that he would only help with the initial location, after which the girl would have to act on her own. The heroine understood that Ryuk did not trust her very much, which made her very annoyed. She needed to come up with a plan to gain the Duke's trust. The girl assumed that when they got there, he would still believe her. A rustling in the bushes distracted the girl. She decided to turn in the direction of the rustling to check who it could be. A man ran in the distance. She realized that it was Duke Rick's knight, as it was written on the pop-up window. Now she understood who could have given Rick information about her. The girl replayed what had happened in her head over and over again, trying to find all the details and evidence. There was some reason why he believed Lindsay inside. They walked outside, Rick's eyes wondering where they should go next, because there was no clear idea where the arena might be. The girl needed to climb higher and look around the capital and take in all the information she could. Having found a tall tower, they went to it, quickly climbing to the very top so that Lindsay could look around. Rick thought about how he had completely lost all vigilance. He couldn't believe that he had started listening to the words of this mysterious woman. He thought about Lindsay's pink eyes, which you can only see once in a lifetime, like a rare gem that can illuminate the dark corners of the soul. Lindsay always attracted the attention of those around her. Her pink eyes, like two bright lights, were filled with life and energy. But Rick always had a knack for reading something in people's eyes, whether it was affection, admiration, or hostility. The man's memories were filled with ghostly silhouettes of people he had ever met, like shadows of fleeting encounters. While the young man was lost in his memories, Lindsay had already found the perfect place and was ready to go there, full of impatience and anticipation of new experiences. He was scared by how quickly she found the arena. Before he knew it, time had flown by and now she was ready for action. Rick continued to look at the girl. Her pink glass-like eyes were clear and transparent. The girl's gaze was also cold and dispassionate to such an extent that it was frightening. He could not read anything at all in her gaze. Without realizing it, the young man's lips began to move and he decided to ask the girl's name. The confused girl answered him, Lindsay. Now he knew that he wasn't just bumping into a stranger, but was talking to Lindsay. The name sounded so nice, and he felt something more starting to develop between them. Looking at the city from above, the girl froze. The wind ruffled her hair, and below spread a motley of lights and noise. As it turned out, the high ground was the right choice. She was looking out for an illegal gambling hall. The girl saw the right sign out of all of them. It was the largest illegal gambling hall in Ulm, run by the Wanted Magdala Group. Lindsay was tired of searching for the right sign. As she saw too much information at once, her head was spinning. They began to descend from the tower, and at some point the girl stumbled, which almost led to her fall. Without a second thought, Rick jerked towards the girl to catch her, his hand managing to grab her wrist at the last moment. The girl also managed to grab the railing so she didn't fall. Her heart started beating faster from fear, but turning to Rick, she felt gratitude overwhelm her. Her face turned pale, and she began to look around, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Lindsay looked up and felt embarrassed. She realized that Rick was too close, and her heart began to beat faster. Every glance of his caused her a vague excitement, making time stand still around her. As Lindsay approached, the world around her suddenly became clear, and she understood everything without further ado. Rick had a look in his eyes, direct and determined, as if he could cut through the darkness of doubt and shed light on the truth. He also has strong shoulders and a tall frame, giving him a confident and impressive appearance that leaves no doubt about his determination. The girl looked at him attentively and insightfully, as if she was trying to unravel all the secrets hidden behind his appearance. The question of how strong Rick really was slowly brewing in her head. The guy, after thinking for a bit, answered that he hadn't been asked this question for a long time, but he wasn't one of those who gave up easily. To this, the girl had a counter question, in which she anxiously asked if he would not be able to protect her. She begged him to take her with him, not wanting to lose hope for safety. Because of the current situation, they had an argument. Each of them was sure that they were right and did not want to give in. The young man, despite all his doubts, was in no hurry to take Lindsay on the mission. The reason was not a lack of trust, but that they, first of all, needed to make sure the information was accurate. Rick noticed strange movements from above in the building that Lindsay pointed to, thus confirming her words. The girl was delighted to feel a drop of trust, which, like a light in a dark tunnel, warmed her heart and gave her hope for the best. The young man wondered how Lindsay was able to find out where the hall was. He knew that there was little information about the location, and this made him doubt her ability. The heroine was in no hurry to answer the question. She was simply rushing the guy. She needed to get to the place as soon as possible. Rick once again caught that mesmerizing look of the girl, which did not leave him indifferent and from which he simply could not take his eyes off. The guy agreed to take Lindsay with him. On one condition, he needed to deal with her separately, hoping that the girl would agree to cooperate with him. She smiled slightly and nodded affirmatively, suddenly filling the atmosphere around her with a slight hint of hope. The girl, with genuine concern in her eyes, offered to carry her in her arms, because time was against them. and every second mattered. Lindsay began to explain how best to do this, emphasizing the importance of maintaining balance and support. The Duke found this too difficult, as he would have to carry both the girl and the weapon at once. He realized that Lindsay wasn't doing it on purpose, but her actions were subtly provoking him, causing both irritation and attraction in his soul at the same time. Still, Rick gently lifted the girl into his arms, and they set off to the designated place, leaving behind them the whisper of the wind and the promise of adventure. They ran past quickly like the wind, not allowing themselves to slow down for a moment. Lindsay was frightened by the speed, as if time and space were blurring around her, and she couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of excitement. She didn't understand how he could move so quickly with a person in his arms. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and her thoughts were confused. She looked at him with admiration and fear, not believing that this was possible. Every step seemed easy, and the wind blew on her face. The girl closed her eyes, and the world around her fell silent, giving way to her dreams and deep-rooted thoughts. They quickly arrived at their destination, and he carefully placed her on the ground, as if he was holding the most valuable treasure in his hands. After looking around, Lindsay, with wise determination, suggested that they hide first to calmly observe the situation and understand what was really going on. Hiding in the shadows, the girl began to persistently ask about who Magdala was, and this question confused Rick because her personality was quite famous and caused a lot of talk. The girl had just arrived in the capital and made it clear that she had heard nothing about Magdala, her lack of understanding only highlighting her innocence and curiosity in this unfamiliar world. He quickly caught her mood, and not wanting to delve into the topic, simply nodded, leaving everything unsaid in the past. Magdala Magic is a vicious criminal who does not hesitate to commit murder, arson, and worse. Her group has a large number of subordinates. Her crimes were carefully planned. She left behind only confusion and bewilderment. Lindsay interrupted Rick's story, genuinely interested and asking why this man was still free despite his terrible actions. Rick, sincerely apologizing, said that they were short of people, and that was why the criminal was still at large. Magdala is known for sacrificing her subordinates for the sake of escape. Her subordinates do not even know each other by sight, which makes it difficult for spies to infiltrate. Suddenly, a new quest appeared before the girl. Her task was to ensure the flawless escape of the fugitive from the arena. Lindsay was deep in thought about completing the task. If she succeeded in it, she would not only save Lyra, but also earn the gold that was so needed. Thoughts, like a storm, took her out of the usual course of life. The girl wanted to understand whether Rick had a clear plan of action, or whether it was worth starting a raid immediately. Turning away from the girl, he confirmed her words about the need for a raid with obvious agreement. There could be casualties in a surprise raid. Rick confirmed the girl's words, adding that sometimes you have to sacrifice something to achieve your goal. His serious words greatly frightened the girl, leaving an anxious premonition in her heart. Remembering Eliza's words, Lindsay realized that this was not his responsibility, and she was left wondering what the Duke had in mind when he was going to take this on himself. The girl did not plan to condemn Rick's actions because she had an idea that could surpass all his decisions. He was interested in how events were going to develop further, so he continued listening to the girl. Rick waited with keen interest for Lindsay to share her thoughts, ready to dive into her fascinating ideas. The girl stood at a crossroads. On the one hand, she did not want it to be obvious that she was the sage reader, but on the other hand, she did not want Lyra to suffer. Looking around, Lindsay noticed guards sitting, chatting, pretending to drink alcohol when in fact the bottles contained water. The girl suggested that the victims were most likely on the second basement floor, and Magdala was probably on the first. Rick explained how Magdala manages to escape, usually at some distance from the main base. There is a secret shelter. Secret passages are used only by close people. The girl plunged into deep thought, trying to imagine where this mysterious refuge could be hidden. The young man, confident in his plan, suggested getting rid of the guards first. But Lindsay, considering all the risks, quietly asked him to wait a little with this decision. She asked if the young man trusted her, hoping to hear an answer that would dispel her doubts. His answer was not long in coming, and there was confidence in his voice. He still trusted the girl. Keeping her trust in Lindsay, she confidently asked him to follow her plans, believing that the choice he had made was the right one. He picked the girl up again to continue on his way, and smiling, admitted that no one had ever hugged him so tenderly. She was slightly embarrassed, and, with a slight smile, asked him not to dwell on this difficult moment. Lindsay found Magdala's secret hideout. Magdala prepared a hideout to escape from the illegal arena. She scanned everyone there with her gaze. With this information, they definitely had a chance of success. Now it was time to move on to implementing the plan. Lindsay asked to return to the arena. They returned to the arena. 2 guards were sitting on the stairs. At first, they did not pay attention to the girl. After the heroine came closer, the men turned their attention to her and froze, enchanted by her presence. A sweet girl with a trembling expression on her face turned to the guards with a question about the girl with blue fluffy hair, and the guards, struck by her beauty, were momentarily speechless. The guards looked at each other as if trying to silently agree on how to answer the question, and their silent interaction only added to the atmosphere of mystery and anticipation. One of them told the girl that he had just recently seen a woman with blue hair. The surprised girl asked where he could have seen her. She really wanted to help her new friend. Interrupting Lindsay, one of them suggested going inside and discussing everything that interested her. The heroine laughed sheepishly. Telling herself in her mind that the guard had been caught, she felt a slight surge of joy. She agreed to enter the arena with a light heart, confidently. As if showing the way, she walked ahead of the guys. Something terrible happened. The guy came up to her from behind, and as soon as the door closed, he quietly said that if she obeyed, then everything would be fine. Lindsay pretended to be a very scared girl, but in her mind, she was ready to defend herself. She quickly assessed the situation and looked for the right moment to break out of this frightening situation. The men led her deeper into the building, and she persistently looked around, remembering every detail of the route, despite the excitement that overwhelmed her. As they walked along the long corridors, the girl thought that if Rick had simply burst in, she would have immediately escaped through the secret passage. The girl was being led to the door when suddenly a gang member with scars on his face appeared. His surprise was so great that ordinary security guards entered the building. He listened to their story with surprise, as if each word they said opened a new, mysterious page for him. The guards presented the girl as a trophy, putting her on display as proof of their strength and power. The man grabbed Lindsay's hand abruptly, pulling her towards him. She looked at him in surprise. A mixture of fear and bewilderment could be seen in her eyes. The girl was very frightened by the stranger's actions, which seemed unpredictable and threatening to her. He proudly took the heroine and showed her to the guards, pointing out that because of such a trifle they had made a serious mistake by leaving the door without proper supervision. The girl, lost in her thoughts, went to explore the insides of the arena in search of something fascinating and mysterious. Lindsay paused, looking curiously at the 2 envelopes that attracted her attention, like mysterious messages from another world. While pulling the rope, the man, with barely noticeable sarcasm in his voice, suddenly asked the heroine if she was going to meet her friend. She asked persistently and mercilessly where Magdala was hiding, leaving no room for doubt or evasion. With all these system windows around, the girl did not feel intimidated. Rather, it resembled an exciting game, full of surprises and mysteries. Lindsay, with unexpected directness, asked him if his name was really Rainer Gilder. His face contorted in surprise. He could not understand how the girl could know his name. The girl left him no chance, throwing out bare facts about the man with amazing confidence, and he only froze in immobility from confusion. He asked Lindsay for the club password to verify her membership, and after looking at the pop-up window, she instantly recognized the words she needed. She peered intently and piercingly into the man's face, as if trying to unravel his secrets at first glance. Having given the password, a sick lion roars, she surprised the man even more, as if with an elegant gesture opening the door to the world of her unusual thoughts. Frightened, he tried to change the subject, as if seeking refuge in words to avoid the intense gaze directed at him. The man was greatly alarmed by the fact that Duke Rick might unexpectedly visit them for an inspection, suddenly darkening the atmosphere of calm with anxious thoughts about the consequences. By tricking him into taking her to Magdala, Lindsay played on the innocence of her gaze. The girl, filled with determination, continued her request, adding a desire to do one more thing that could change the course of events. She continued by explaining that among the people they kidnapped was a girl with blue hair who was one of Lindsay's subordinates, while continuing to deceive Reiner. The girl realized that her cunning plan of deception had been successful. Now she looked forward to meeting with the main boss, ready to discuss the results of her plan. Entering the office, they saw with horror how Magdala had sophisticatedly manipulated the destinies of innocent people, playing with their hopes and fears. 2 people with frightened, trembling voices begged for mercy, hoping that their pleas could melt the heart of the merciless executioner. The girl looked merciless as she spoke the words about the traitor talking too much, as if the steel grip of her gaze could cut into the soul. She asked her subordinates with cold calm to get rid of him, as if it were nothing more than a routine order. Magdala continued her fascinating story, claiming that many people, like rats, are able to survive even in the harshest conditions. That even after trying to get rid of them, they still find a way to crawl to the surface. She wondered what had happened to the money, and the subordinate informed her that even if it had been the Grand Duke, it would have been extremely difficult to identify a bank account opened in a fictitious name. Like a ghostly memory, it suddenly emerged in Magdala that she had twice successfully eluded the Duke, leaving behind only a light trail of adventure. Reflecting that the mighty Duke had already fallen for the false invitation and was rushing to the wrong place, Magdala felt a mixture of anxiety and satisfaction at her cunning. Everything was going so smoothly that she wanted to laugh with joy, as if she were the main character in a fascinating comedy. The subordinate made her happy by saying that the manager had already arrived, and after finishing his drink, she told the guy to pretend to be herself and she would leave here. At that very second, a girl was brought to her. She asked who it was. She stood nearby, a little embarrassed, and her eyes shone with interest and fear. It was Sir Wayne's subordinate. Magdala was furious that it was not Wayne himself who arrived, but only a subordinate. She was angry that he was asking her to meet someone whose identity was unknown to her. Magdala's subordinate gave information about the manager, that she knew the next base. She found it suspicious that a subordinate had information that was only available to managers. She asked to let the girl in to get to know better who she was. She wanted to understand with whom she would be communicating. Lindsay walked into the office where a thick atmosphere of tension seemed to hang in the air, making everyone hold their breath in anticipation of the outcome. Magdala began to question whether she was really Wayne's subordinate. She realized that something was fishy here, and that they were trying to deceive her. So the girl grabbed the glass that was on the table and threw it towards her subordinate. At first glance, it was clear to her that this was a noble girl and not a subordinate. While Magdala dealt with her subordinate, Lindsay tried to reassure herself that she still had system windows. After bowing, the girl introduced herself as Lindsay and that she worked under the direction of Mr. Wayne. Pretending to be subordinate and following the plan, she said that she was very glad to meet the great Magdala, mentally reassuring herself not to ruin the plan. She hadn't seen anyone not afraid of her for a long time, and the girl was amazed that Wayne could have such a subordinate. The girl was still in shock that Wayne's subordinate was a noblewoman. She wanted to check it out immediately. Lindsay shared a brave act. She took a risk and came to her herself, despite all possible obstacles. She told him that her boss, Wayne, was plotting something behind Magdala's back. He was unhappy with the distribution of profits in the district, and so he planned to betray her. The girl knew that Lindsay was telling the truth, since the spy she had planted in Wayne had told her the same thing. Looking reproachfully at the girl, she asked how he could trust her if she already knew this information. In this case, Lindsay suggested that she take a test to prove her trustworthiness. Meanwhile, the Duke was already on Magdala's trail, not missing a single street, searching them with the persistence of a true detective, absorbed in his goal. Rick's subordinate felt that Lindsay's girlfriend was very suspicious, and he was tormented by doubts. She is a noble woman with a clear mind. She can be convinced of anything, the servant continued. Rick initially thought the same, but the moment he saw her eyes, oddly enough, he wanted to believe the girl. For the first time in his life, he was faced with an insurmountable obstacle. Other people's thoughts slipped away from him like the wind through his fingers. The subordinate was annoyed by this fact, since it is impossible to trust a stranger at a given moment. Rick continued. He said that after that, he decided to ask Lindsay a few more questions. They needed to focus on getting Magdala's attention, because that was what their further interaction depended on. Lost in his dreams, Rick couldn't help but fantasize about the moment when all the difficulties would be left behind, and he would meet her again to share the experiences and words that had been waiting for their moment for so long. Pushing aside all thoughts, he tried to concentrate on the search. Every movement required concentration, and thoughts led him astray. The girl laughed cheerfully, realizing how naively Lindsay tried to win her trust. With the dagger shining with a terrifying gleam, she said that if the girl was not one of his subordinates, then her true nature would remain a mystery to him. Magdala was amazed that the girl, looking at the dagger, did not flinch and remained confident, as if it were just a toy. She asked with slight trepidation to pronounce the very password that Wayne had kept confidentially. To Lindsay, it was as obvious as it was a genuine truth waiting to be openly acknowledged. The girl was surprised that the heroine told her the password, to strangle the black lion. She went on to say that the previous password was, "The lion cub limps and the old lion shakes his head." Magdala, filled with rage and discouragement, felt her heart filling with a storm of emotions, like a storm crashing against the rocks. She carefully brought the dagger towards Lindsay, but the girl's face did not show the slightest worry, as if they were in a world where danger could not reach them. The heroine was amazed at how confidently the girl held herself in such a dangerous situation, as if the threat itself only emphasized her inner strength. She realized that it was all true, that Wayne had betrayed her for a couple of bucks. Lindsay continued that he wasn't the only one. Besides Wayne, there were also Mallow and Ella. They all betrayed the organization, and this betrayal was a real blow to the team. She was stunned. Wayne was one thing, but Mallow and Ellie were also traitors. The young people were having a dialogue about traitors. Mallow had lost his closest friend, and it seemed he was unhappy about it. Lindsay's plan worked. Deep down, she was happy, but in reality, she didn't show it because it would have exposed her secret. She continued that the important information was that they had dragged the Duke into the arena. Confidently, Lindsay continued that they needed to escape from this place urgently, since it was unknown when the Duke would be there. Suddenly, everyone heard a dull sound. Magdala did not understand what was happening, but Lindsay knew that it was Rick. He was just in time. The frightened girl screamed that the Duke's knights were outside. Everyone became alarmed, and a feeling of imminent danger hung in the air. In a panic, she rushed away, feeling her heart beat in unison with her steps, full of fear and hopelessness. Running to the window, Magdala saw the knights fighting furiously with her guards and screamed in panic, begging them not to let them in. Somehow, contrary to all expectations, the Duke was here, although he should have been far away, and she could not understand how this could have happened. The bitter truth, like an ice shard, pierced the girl's heart. She was betrayed, lured into a trap, and the proof of this was the appearance of the Grand Duke Rick. A wave of triumph washed over Rick, enveloping him in the sweet feeling of absolute victory. Despair gripped the girl in icy vices. There was nowhere to run, and her mind feverishly searched for a way out of this trap. Thinking about what had happened, Magdala feverishly looked for a way to retreat, and the image of the stranger, like a splinter, did not give her peace. She tried to think through everything. Also, because of the betrayal, the girl wanted to introduce Lindsay into her social circle. The girl was very pleased with the fact that Magdala was still able to trust her. Lindsay, watching the girl's actions, couldn't help but wonder if she was crazy. Having put all the pieces of the puzzle together, the girl came to an obvious conclusion. Magdala's actions were clear to her. She ordered her allies to wait for some time so that she could escape, and also reminded them of the secret passage. With a decisive gesture that brooked no objection, she ordered the heroine to follow her. While waiting at the hidden passage, I whispered to the girl, asking her to hurry. The girls, as if enchanted by the mysterious flame, dived into the depths of the fireplace, where there was a secret passage. Suddenly free, they rushed forward, light as the wind, smelling the scent of freedom. It was hard for Lindsay to run after the girl, as she was wearing a long and heavy dress. Her laughter blossomed, light and ringing like a silver bell. She laughed at the fact that she had already run away 3 times from Duke Rick, a man thrice blessed by the goddess. Lindsay tried to call out to the girl, who in turn interrupted her and told her that she would be the highest-ranking employee in her organization. Having reached the appointed place, Magdala invited the girl to discuss their next job. The girl, who had disappeared in the blink of an eye, realized at that very moment that she had begun to fall into the unknown. The fall had left her confused about what was happening, and she needed some time to come to her senses. Duke Rick entered the room with an admiring look. He looked at the girl. He was glad to see the face of Magdala Magic. Her annoyance was obvious. Being caught in such an absurd manner was humiliating. Lindsay approached Rick and asked sarcastically if he was always so punctual. Magdala was shocked. The thought of betraying this girl simply did not fit into her head, hurting and insulting her to the depths of her soul. With a reproachful look, the heroine turned towards the fallen girl and said that she had not been on her side from the very beginning. After a short pause, Magdala sharply and decisively squeezed the dagger's handle in her strong hands. With a sharp movement, she swung at the girl, and the frightened Lindsay took a step back. Without thinking about his actions, Rick rushed to protect the girl. It was important to him that she not get hurt. He was much stronger than Magdala, so he was able to easily pin her face down on the floor and immobilize her. An order for her arrest was immediately issued, and the two immediately obeyed. Lindsay thought about everything that was happening, and she felt relieved that it was all about to end. Then the Duke, with most of the knights, went to capture the rest and sent some of his subordinates to rescue the wounded. The upset girl obediently gained experience, since she had been here only recently and everything new was alien to her. A new day had come. Everything was finally over. The dawn over the city symbolized victory. The girl was happy with the fact that everything went as planned. The condition for the mission's success was to help Magdala escape from the illegal territory. In other words, the girl explained, this man simply needed to be pulled out. In any case, it will take some time for the security forces to arrive once they learn of the Duke's arrival. The Duke shared the information that everything happened only thanks to Lindsay. If not for her, it would have been difficult to catch Magdala. She responded by saying that without Duke Rick, this plan of operation would not have been successful. Continuing to exchange mutual compliments, they unexpectedly felt a slight embarrassment, the blush on their cheeks betraying their inner excitement. Embarrassment spread across her face like a blush, and a barely audible gasp, like a sigh, escaped from her lips, a mixture of surprise and awkwardness. It had been a long time since Lindsay had received compliments, so she felt a little shy. After a difficult chase, the girl wanted to go and rest, but Rick couldn't just let her go. Since everything was finished and further presence here seemed pointless, the girl decided not to linger. The Duke still wanted to know how Lindsay could know about the large number of Magdala bases since no one talked about them. She said calmly, "The more cowardly a person is, the more often he thinks about escaping." She suspected that there must be a secret base there that only she knew about. Catching an awkward pause, the Duke told her that he had no idea that she had understood it so easily. Lindsay continued, reassuring Rick. It was obvious that he didn't know. Such an honest man, he wouldn't be able to guess the thoughts of a criminal. He asked her to tell him what happened when they broke into the base and how the girl was able to win Magdala's trust. The heroine asked him to just pretend that he didn't know anything, since she didn't really want to explain everything. Rick didn't want to bother the girl, as he understood that she was tired and currently under stress. Lindsay was taken aback by his ease. His words of gratitude, sincere and warm as the rays of the setting sun, were addressed to the heroine. Her help in the operation proved invaluable. The girl simultaneously felt embarrassed and proud of her actions, which she had committed recently. She wasn't sure if it was the excitement of hearing gratitude addressed to her or not, but she still felt the sincerity of this man. Rick began to think about how he could thank Lindsay for her help and courage. A plan immediately came to his mind. He invited her to his mansion to express his gratitude. The girl did not understand, but isn't a simple thank you enough? Then he simply invited the girl to visit. In response, Lindsay wondered who could visit the mansion for fun. With a slight smile, asking for ease, the young man asked to be addressed by name, as if extending an invisible thread of trust. Because the formal speech didn't really suit Lindsay, in his opinion. She wondered what a visit for fun meant, and she had to collect her thoughts. If she does go and they find out the girl is talented, it will be very awkward. After thinking over all her words and actions, Lindsay turned around and tried to walk away, saying that she had nothing more to do here. But saying it with that expression on your face should be illegal. The Duke had a huge, beautiful mansion. It was visible from every corner of the city. Everyone who saw it was delighted by the beautiful views. The doors of the mansion swung open and Batilda ran in, saying that she had heard about Magdala Magic's capture. Rick did not expect such a sudden appearance of his old acquaintance. The unexpectedness of what was happening stunned him, but he kept a calm expression on his face, skillfully hiding his confusion. The girl walked into the living room with an unperturbed look, as if it was her mansion, and fell onto the sofa. They continued their conversation about Magdala, and she informed him that Rick should be proud of the capture of this notorious criminal. The conversation seemed to last forever. The Duke also decided to sit down on the sofa since the conversation did not end. Batilda was unhappy with the fact that her father, without any abilities, was still sitting on the throne, and not to mention that he did not even allow her to become a princess. Becoming an emperor and commanding his nephew were the same thing. Frankly speaking, capturing Magdala was not even his duty. Clutching her head, Batilda thought that he had no such ambitions. A look from under half-lowered eyelashes, full of hidden anxiety and indecision, slid across his face. Words stuck in her throat, and she did not know how to continue the conversation. The emperor is a direct descendant of his foolish brother Felix. Having lost both parents, they took control of their nephew. Queen Ari Schroeder, mother of the emperor, had 2 sons, Jack and Lars. The second son, Lars, had a good character, so he was highly valued, but there was one problem. The eldest son, Jack, was prone to violence and did not receive the attention and support he needed from his loved ones. His heart sank with pain, emptiness, and loneliness. The lack of support from those closest to him was a heavy blow for him. It was natural for the queen to consider Lars as her successor, but he refused the position of crown prince. As a result, the position passed to the eldest son, Jack, and the queen postponed the appointment of the crown prince. This was a clear refusal. The appointment of the crown prince was postponed indefinitely, which caused Jack more and more indignation. But one day, an unexpected accident happened to Lars, and the guy left this world, the upset queen followed him, and in the end, Jack ascended the throne. He became emperor, even though it was a position he should never have held because his mother did not recognize the position. So even as time goes by, the anger and sense of inferiority do not go away, but only grow stronger. Besides, this feeling of inferiority is very strong, and Lars's son and his nephew placed all this on the exarch, Batilda said. Her advice was as simple as the morning dew, but as wise as the age-old trees. She urged him to enjoy every moment without burdening himself with trifles. A suggestion arose in Batilda's mind, slightly intriguing, like a whisper behind her back. Could this really be the same girl who had won the Duke's heart? She wondered if he really had no interest in women or Lindsay, since her abilities really did seem extraordinary. Given the circumstances, she was a rhetoric sage, Batilda guessed. Her eyes seemed to see into the essence of everything. Rick recalled the history of the Rethor family. Baron Rethor is dead, and his wife is missing. Speaking about the tragedy of her family would be too harsh on her. If he was truly considered a great duke, he would come in person and this would stop at the relationship level. He really liked the way Lynxie communicated with him. Batilda noticed that Rick looked very happy. She wondered what could have caused this. Smiling, he answered the girl that nothing special had happened, as long as it was something good. Meanwhile, a girl was riding in a beautiful carriage at the invitation that Rick had left for her. She got out of the carriage. The girl was probably in a hurry, since she was delayed not only at work. Lindsay looked flawless, her dress shimmering in the sunlight. The girl was glad that she had finally arrived. A view of the mansion opened up before her. The girl stood for several minutes and examined every detail. She had never seen such beautiful buildings. In a moment, a memory flashed that happened a few days ago. Eliza asked to cooperate with her. Among the hidden valuables of Magdala Magic, who was captured a couple of days ago, there was an item that required appraisal. She was shocked by such a request. The girl assumed that this could be a request for cooperation from the Grand Duke. Eliza confirmed her guess, since this time he would be helping the new staff. In this regard, the Grand Duke sent a request for cooperation to their guild. Lynxie needed to think about the proposal. It was a real headache for the girl. She tried her best to avoid meeting Rick. Eliza continued, telling that the Duke had made a large order this time, and she did not want to lose such an important client. Being hired meant that she would have to perform the duties of an employee, but she didn't even want to think about meeting the Duke. Despite this, a boss must maintain her dignity, and Lindsay looked for a way to refuse this task. Eliza was very excited about the Grand Duke's rare request. She really wants to take the opportunity to communicate with the Duke. The girl understood everything and asked where she needed to go, although she felt a little uneasy. It was for this reason that the girl came to the Grand Duke. She did not know how safe it was, but she went anyway. Before arriving at the mansion, 2 female employees of the bureau were crying and asking if it was safe. It seemed to her that the place where she arrived was very noisy. All the magicians were sent here. Seeing the young man who came out of the mansion, Lynxie was very surprised by his excellent appearance. She couldn't believe it. This guy was here too. She hoped that she would never meet him again, especially in such a situation. Trying to hide in panic, the girl attracted more and more attention to herself. The Duke nevertheless saw and recognized the girl. Dropping all his affairs, he decided that he still had to approach her, because later there might not be such a chance. Lindsay realized that the Duke had noticed her, which made her panic even more. She heard heavy but fast approaching steps behind her. Rick was very determined and had no intention of backing down. The girl tried to hide as quickly as possible, muttering under her breath a request that he not recognize her. In a minimum amount of time, Rick caught up with the girl. She realized this and had to stop. Covering herself with a hood, she was nervous standing next to him, just so that he wouldn't recognize her. Rick, standing behind the girl, wanted to find out who was hiding, reaching out his hand to her. Suddenly, a guy appeared in front of him, saying that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. What a coincidence! He said that a lot of time had indeed passed, and it was very timely for the girl. He is already so attentive, but it's too early to relax. It's time to hurry. A guy in an elegant suit accompanied the ladies to the exhibition, inviting them inside. There were a lot of items inside, and judging by their appearance, one could tell that they were valuable. He said that all of this belonged to Magdala Magic. They suspected that all of the items were enchanted. Lindsay looked at all this very carefully and wondered when she managed to steal all this. As she passed by, her attention was drawn to something glowing in a jar nearby. The lost artifact is a magical weapon of antiquity, once lost by the Empress, capable of exploding, creating a powerful wave of cold. It looked more like a snowflake carved from a precious stone. All the ladies turned to her with a request to demonstrate because she is an appraiser, very popular among the magicians from the 3rd floor. All the girls looked at her with admiration, extolling her abilities above everything else. She gave in, asking to be careful and watch how the people around her reacted. Casting a heavy glance at the artifact, she thought that everything would go smoothly and quickly. Meanwhile, Rick was sitting in his office, sorting through some not very important papers, killing time. Sighing, he was sure it was Lindsay, even though nothing was visible. He specifically asked those girls to help him make sure that this was true, that she really had come. Maybe she came to see him, but that can't be. Otherwise, she wouldn't be avoiding him. Rick would like to communicate with her as if they knew each other, but it seems she wants to pretend she doesn't know him. The guy leaned over to him, asking if he should send someone to check when the job was done. Rick said there was no need for that. He had already sent the best, if it was who he thought it would be over quickly. He didn't notice anything dangerous. He would report to the Duke and return. She needed to finish quickly. The girl showed Lindsay the last copy and she was surprised when she looked at it. Lost artifact activation conditions are met explosion in 5 seconds more than 30 people are nearby. Lindsay was horrified. This artifact was going to explode. This couldn't happen with all these people. She understood that, including these two, there were exactly 30 of them in this room. If the artifact explodes, they will all die. This cannot be allowed. She reached out to him. Taking it in her hands, she pressed it with all her might. It was very cold. Her body began to be covered with a thin layer of ice and snow. What to do now? Rick couldn't stay away and quickly headed towards Lindsay, not letting her die. Everything happened suddenly and quickly. The girls cleared their throats, not understanding what was happening. Lindsay was unconscious. Slowly opening her eyes, she heard her name being called. Rick held her in his arms and asked if she was okay and if anything hurt. The famous sword of the legendary emperor who started the era of triumph, the sword was illuminated by the goddess. He destroyed the artifact. Rick said that this thing seemed dangerous to him. She had already decided that she would die that very second, saying that she was very cold. The guy said that they had better leave this place and he would take her home. She was shocked that he would take her home when she was fine. He didn't have to do this, carry her safely home in his arms. She finally understood that she wanted to meet him earlier, if you think about it, when he was holding her like this. This is the second time he has done this and saved her from trouble. Sitting in the cart, she rudely said that she could handle everything herself and did not need help. But Rick didn't think so, calmly saying that she was badly injured that time. He decided to ask why she was avoiding him. Lindsay was shocked, asking when this happened. She asked not to ask her to act as if they knew each other. That was too much. And she is very good at such informal turns of speech. He should always have the last word. She asked sharply why he continued to invite her to his estate. Rick was surprised. On their first meeting, she risked her life for her friend. Today, she did the same again. But still, she didn't understand what this had to do with his invitations. Smiling, he asked how she hadn't realized it yet, and Lindsay turned away. Rick said that she is a good person, brave and strong, so he wants to see her more often. Embarrassed, he said all these words to the girl absolutely normally and naturally. Although she can see system windows, she has no special abilities. But if she had the opportunity to go back to the past, she would have done the same. Looking at the girl's reaction, Rick smiled silently. She was deep in thought. The carriage stopped after a while near a small estate on the road. As Rick left, he extended his hand to Lindsay out of respect so that she wouldn't fall while going down. Looking at him, Lindsay already thought how much he looked like a prince, also handsome. She carefully extended her hand to him, her heart inside her stopping for a moment. He asked her to rest, saying that he would call a doctor, and also asked her to meet again. Frowning, she said that such a chance would not come again. Rick sat back down and drove away. The girl watched him, embarrassed for a second. Holding hands, Eliza thanked the girl for the courage she had shown for them. It was nonsense, Lindsay said. They could raise her salary, but she asked if it would be possible to get by with verbal gratitude. It was so like her, and yet she felt like people were starting to see her as a good person. Suddenly, the girl's sweet conversation was interrupted by someone asking if they were that same Lindsay. Marinus, a proud appraiser working on the second floor, said that lately all he heard about was her. And she is close to the deputy guild master, which means she is a skilled magician, or maybe she has a gold license. He hinted that she was there, thanks to her good connections, and there were plenty of such people in every organization. While shaking hands, she said that she was not a magician and did not have a license. But how did she end up in Sophis at all? The bureau has a very serious selection process. Lately, people who didn't like her began to appear in the bureau. Eliza was outraged that he was hinting that she was just lucky. Did he understand that by doing so he was insulting her too? How else would such a person have ended up there? Everyone agreed with his opinion. In this case, the girl suggested resolving this situation honestly through a duel of appraisers. Marinus quickly agreed with Eliza's idea to settle everything through a duel right now. The three of them gathered in front of the object, and everyone around began to whisper about it. Lindsay didn't understand why she wasn't even asked and was just dragged into all this. Marinus stood proudly before Lady Lindsay, but Eliza didn't care that they were ready to begin. The first item to evaluate is holy water. The aura of holiness is clearly felt. It must be destroyed to successfully complete the quest. Having brought his trinkets, Marinus said that he would begin the first examination. Looking at him, Lindsay, it was interesting to watch how the appraiser works. Marinus said that this was sacred water. Judging by the outgoing energy, it was created by the last of the gods. He laughed, saying that he was sorry that it all ended so quickly before it had even begun. The servants also laughed, saying that she had no chance, that she had imagined herself to be someone unknown. The girls said it was ridiculous and that Lindsay would win. She could. She watched him carefully, but now it was her turn and there was no need to speak ahead of time. She calmly said that she had no intention of stroking his ego by having her standing there. He folded his arms and stepped aside, deciding to see how she would handle it. They brought her a relic, the burial inventory of the tyrant Solak Arahan. She demanded the next one. It was a mask of Giacomo Casanova, but it was a fake. Proudly, she asked to bring the next one. It was the land from the ancient kingdom. Marinus was shocked. Bring the next item. She easily answered that it was an ancient vase. Eliza brought the last item that was left out of all the others. Marinus was angry. She didn't even have any magical tools. The girls said that she was not deceiving them, and that she did not have magic. They would have felt it. The man was wildly irritated, not understanding how this could be, but Lindsay didn't care. She actually started talking like that, probably because she's a genius. He pulled away from her, shocked at how much she irritated him. And so Eliza has determined the winner, and no one should have any doubts about the girl. The girls she knew were happy for Lindsay, clapping their hands and congratulating her. They hugged her, offering huge congratulations and saying that they were rooting for her. They approached her and said that Sophus's appraisers wanted to be friends with her, but the girls were outraged, saying that they had to stand in line. Eliza was very pleased. She always worried about them and hoped that they would become friends with the others. In her past life, she never had such a warm and cozy relationship. She knew it was all just a game, but she had so much fun being there. Eliza sent everyone home early, asking Lindsay to stay for a minute. Eliza tried not to show it, but she really dreamed of her going to the auction with her. The girls said she looked tense, but she would be okay. In fact, Eliza was simply glowing with anticipation of the auction. In fact, she didn't feel the tension. No one else sees these system windows. If she hadn't seen these windows, she would have been just as scared. Sitting at the table, the girl ate excellent meat. She really liked it. Eliza said she did a good job, asking if she liked the menu. Holding a knife and fork, she asked if she was trying to appease her with one dinner. The duel was simply a way to make her appreciate all these items, but they needed to know and show others what she was capable of. So she did think about her after all. Next time she expects more compensation. Eliza asked if she would like to attend the Kahashu auction with her in a few days. Eliza suggested that Lindsay go for a walk if she had finished her meal. She wanted to put the Colossus sphere up for auction and also buy something valuable. This is the horrible thing she was supposed to evaluate as a test. She planned to use it to strengthen Sophus's status as the best guild. But the girl warned that she needed more payment than she offered her. She really didn't do anything for nothing. Eliza will pay her 50% after her assessment. The guild will just sit back, hoarding money and fame, and they'll still get a percentage. Frowning, she said that the girl wanted to surpass the guy, didn't she? How did she know? Lindsay only agreed to 80%. Sitting on Rick's couch, we asked if he would be present at the auction. He heard that they were displaying a particularly dangerous item there, so it couldn't fall into the wrong hands. It will be put up for auction by Sophus's agency, and Lindsay seems to be involved. The man called her a suspicious woman, but Rick asked her to watch her speech. Since the day he saw her off, I haven't heard anything about her. Is everything okay? The man began to discuss the plan of action for tomorrow's auction, but Rick. He looked out the window, hoping that it was really she who he saw there. Lindsay was walking down the street in the company of a girl, laughing at the conversations. Seeing that everything was fine with her, Rick relaxed and smiled sweetly. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he started laughing. The guy didn't understand what was wrong with him. He replied that everything was fine, but now he was looking forward to the auction with great impatience. The ball began. People in costumes danced and chatted in the bright hall. Lindsay was delighted that everything looked better inside than on the outside. Today she will be there as her escort limited space. Everything was fine, and Eliza really was a master of putting on a straight face. Bobideau, a mid-level guild leader, was desperate to achieve results at the auction. And where did that impassive face disappear to? There was such hostility on his face. The man greeted Eliza, saying that he was glad to see her there. This one of the managers looked like he was capable of embezzling funds. But nevertheless, she wonders what kind of dirty work it was. They once did some dirty deeds, but they have cleared up their past. He heard that Sophus had put out quite a few items this time, hoping that they were not useless. In the past, Eliza mistakenly bought a counterfeit product from Bobideau. Even without a guild leader, they managed to keep Sophus afloat thanks to their skills. Well, even if he ever falls, he will allow them to work under him. As he left, he laughed loudly at them, but the ladies clearly didn't like it. She asked for forgiveness from Lindsay. It didn't seem nice on her part. "This man wasn't always so rude," she said, watching him take the glass. Since the guild leader was absent for so long, people began to look down on them. Their leader is actually a very impressive mage and said he was looking for something interesting. But suddenly a girl interrupted them, saying that everything would start soon and they needed to take their seats. Eliza, hearing the announcement, suggested going inside. Lindsay supported her. It will be worth every coin. She will show them an entertaining scene. Lily of the Battlefield decorative egg made of pearls and diamonds. This is the item she bought when she met Batilda, and they ended up putting it on display. Suddenly, someone nearby decided to buy it for 150,000 gold. The stakes grew, they competed, and the numbers became unimaginably huge. Eliza asked what happened to her. She said that she had a stomach ache. The Battlefield Lily was sold, and they decided to move on to the next lot. Green Death, a work by Holly, the sudden death of the artist will dramatically increase its value. Lindsay decided to buy this painting, but Eliza said that it was useless. Lindsay asked the girl to trust her. If she didn't pay off, she would cover the difference herself. The man watched as Sophus made another stupid purchase. The girl announced the lot. Many came to look at it. The sphere of the Wraith King. But suddenly, Eliza began to behave strangely, laughing at people's bets. Looking at Eliza Lindsay, I thought she was too excited. Looking at the lot, she didn't understand whether it was okay to leave it for sale in this state. Cursed by plague and madness, if you bury it, the earth will wither and everything on it will perish. Depending on who wins it, this item will literally destroy the world. Suddenly, someone offered 240,000 gold, and the voice seemed familiar to her. It wasn't so clear under the cloak, but the system showed that it was Rick. The girl judge was excited, asking if the stakes would be higher. Eliza realized that he came only for the sphere and left immediately after purchasing it. Standing up from her seat, Lindsay said that she would go first to ask for forgiveness. They presented a new lot of painting. Removing the canvas, they will discover a hidden painting. As she moved away, she said that she needed to earn a living and that she would buy it right away. Standing in the doorway, she looked around, having lost sight of Rick and not understanding where he was. The sign showed arrows that led to the guy. Lindsay was surprised. Turning the corner, she saw the guy's back. Apparently, she found him very quickly. He stood facing the girl, quickly and unhurriedly doing his business. Taking off his hood, he exhaled, glad that he had managed to buy it in time. Damaged by the hand of the Blessed One, the sphere lost its power. He turned sharply, noticing movement very close to him. Who was there? Turning back, the girl realized that he had noticed her, and their eyes met. Looking in on her, he asked if she had really come to see him. He was very glad to see the girl, thinking that she had come to him. She heard that the Emperor was bothering him, so she wanted to make sure that he wouldn't do anything. But she didn't know that he would destroy something as valuable as this sphere. He heard that Sophus would be participating in the auction and did not expect to see her there at all. But she didn't expect that he would destroy what he paid such a large sum for. The sphere was dangerous. It could bring a lot of trouble to this world. It's for the best. She was surprised when she saw on the sign that he was actually happy with what he had done. All the quests she went on were meant to destroy the world. So, no matter what happens, Rick's fate is in no way connected to the destruction of the world. Maybe if she helps, he will become the future emperor. He didn't understand why she was looking at him like that. She was asking if he had any hopes for the future. Hearing such a strange question, he found it difficult to answer. Gently stroking Lindsay's hair, he softly said no. He was already satisfied with everything, Rick said convincingly, looking at Lindsay. So the girl spoke well, but she wanted to talk to him. But her very important conversation was interrupted by Eliza, who had been looking for her for a long time. Masha said with her hand that she was standing with Rick, and everything was fine with her. Quickly leaving the conversation, Lindsay said that her boss urgently needed her. In that case, can she decline? Lindsay asked the guy. Does she really have nothing else to say? Eliza asked in surprise. The guy who came up from behind asked Rick what they should do with the fragments. He looked into the distance at the girls leaving, and how Eliza asked questions. The guy said that Rick was very charming, but rather the girl was rude. But why does it seem to him that she is avoiding him? He was very disappointed. Watching her go, he vowed that next time he wouldn't let her just leave. That day, the way he suddenly moved towards her scared her, so she ran away. But now she thought about it, and the expression on his face then was like hers in the past. In the past, when she carried everything on her shoulders, when she did not expect a reward. In a way, his fate is also quite tragic. Eliza called Lindsay. She said that all the items they bought at the auction had arrived. Looking around, she noticed that there were many more things than she had bought then. But she didn't notice just one thing when she asked where they put it. Eliza showed the painting she bought. Is it really that good? Angela is a famous artist, but even a good sketch is difficult to sell. She grinned as she listened to Eliza say that it was not just a sketch. She ordered the canvas to be removed from the frame of this beautiful sketch. Eliza was confused. They would damage the painting. Lindsay said that everything was fine. Having carefully placed the painting, the servants began to carry out Lindsay's order. The guy asked if they could do that because it was Angela's painting. There was something behind the canvas. There was another painting. Eliza asked to take it down quickly. Having removed the canvas completely, they were all shocked by what they saw and did not believe it. The painting Ascension of the Angel painted in oil costs at least 22,400,000 gold. Eliza, when Lindsay had nothing to do anyway, gave her a vacation, but there is a point in it. Yet she is a genius appraiser who can recognize a masterpiece worth millions of gold. The price for the painting was 900 gold pieces, but she agreed on a sum 80% higher. And this is 1 in 72 billion. She was happy to become rich. Eliza gave her an advance of 700,000 gold so that she could have a good rest. Working from morning till night for years, she often thought about what she would do if she won the lottery. And the first step was always the system said that land prices would rise for the next 30 years. The land on which the imperial family plans to erect a huge monument. First, she wanted to walk around and see what kind of houses she could buy. While walking down the street, she accidentally overheard a conversation between two men and decided to stop. They talked about the temple being closed, but what kind of temple is it, and why is it so important? The man didn't know, but they said that the emperor was seriously ill and was brought there. The second one was shocked because they took him to the temple, which means the doctors can no longer help. They didn't understand what would happen to the country after this. They were scared. The emperor is sick. It was literally familiar, the opening screen of another universe. After the death of the emperor, the apocalypse began. A poisonous fog began to descend from the mountains. The crops dried up, and what else did the monsters need? The world was declared exactly like this. Suddenly, the system gave out a mandatory quest that could not be refused. Many windows were flying around Lindsay. She didn't understand anything. 3 quests appeared before her, one worse than the other, and why did she need all this? She thought she would go crazy, as if someone really wanted her to do it. Looking again, she thought she had to choose one of the 3. The first attempt to spread the plague in the mountains, she immediately refused to do so. The second thing she did was to blame Batilda. After thinking about it, she realized that it was simply impossible. The third was to gain the emperor's trust. Apparently, it would be possible to cure him, if she could meet him, but why would he agree to meet her? But suddenly, an idea about that emperor came into her head. When she came to the palace, she said that she had come to meet the gray man. The butler was shocked when he saw the red badge, but what was so special about it? Turning around, he hurried away, asking to wait there for a little while. Looking at him, she realized that it was not in vain that she left him. He was useful to her. Batilda gave it to her invitingly, but Lindsay didn't think she would come to her. But apparently life is an interesting thing and gives us unpredictable events. A knight approached her asking her to follow him, if she could be convinced he could be used in the war. She looked around. Even the simple corridor looked rich with statues. Passing by the windows, she decided to look into it and was surprised by the view. The statue of the winged lion beneath it was the Labyrinth of Eternity, located beneath the palace. She tried to find at least something useful, but so far she had only seen dubious artifacts. Batilda came out to her, not expecting that she would actually come to her. Lindsay bowed in thanks for the welcome, but Batilda asked her not to. Turning around, she was glad to see the guest, inviting her into her house. It's quite dangerous that the sage is sniffing something out in the palace, and since she's in the hood, she understands it. She asked what important business Lindsay had that made her come to her. Did she really come to beat money out of her for the egg? How brave, she thought. She proudly said that she had come to cure the emperor of his illness. Hearing this, the girl was shocked. She expected to hear anything. Standing up, the girl said that this was not interesting to her, and they finished. She didn't think she would have to say it, but she didn't care about the emperor's condition. Of course, he was her father and all that. She respected him, but nothing more. Lindsay was shocked, and how to understand this? She doesn't care about her father. Princess Batilda was not interested in saving the emperor. He wasn't important to her, but she wasn't going to get rid of the girl because of the medicine. She has no reason to want to save or kill the emperor. That's all. Batilda asked Sir to escort the guest, Lindsay, to the palace gates. Putting on the hood, the girl did not object because she could not do anything. Seeing Lindsay walk out of the room, Batilda was calm. She just sat there drinking her tea and eating aromatic chocolates. The sage Rithora appeared only now, for her it was funny. After her father's accession to the throne, his royal authority during the festivities disappeared without a trace. To change the system of power, she needed a force much greater than what she has now. If the sage who appears once in a century is on her side, things will become much easier. The girls at the table didn't understand why she wasn't the crown princess. While sipping her tea, Lindsay asked what was wrong. Agnes said that she was always saying something like that and everyone understood it. Was it really that bad, she asked? But Lindsay could say that she was from Ruthia. They knew she was hiding something, but they didn't try to find out. They even came up with ways to justify to her how good they really are. Agnes decided to tell why Batilda is not the crown princess, starting with the story of His Majesty's ascension to the throne. They were told that he envied his brother and one day he died, after which he ascended the throne. The case of Princess Batilda is also simple, they said. Lindsay listened attentively. There is also Crown Prince Felix, but there are bad rumors about him that he is not capable of anything. Incapable and aggressive. It reminded me of something like Lindsay, but what? After thinking about it, she realized that the emperor had raised his eldest son to be a copy of himself. Now it's clear why the system gave me a quest to meet Batilda. She will probably want to ascend the throne, even at the cost of the lives of her father and brother. So that's what it was all about, and that's how the story should go. Whatever the system offers her, she needs someone who won't go down the wrong path. The soulless Sir stood in front of the girl asking what she wanted there. She was confused, saying that her name was Lindsay, but why was she so worried? She came to the Grand Duke's estate without warning. What should she do? She is neither an assistant nor an important witness. She should have sent the letter first, but suddenly the Sir began to bow before her, asking her to wait a little. She didn't understand what was happening. They knew she would come. A nice man stood in front of her, saying that they were glad to see her and would be happy to see her off. A kind butler, even kinder servants, tea and desserts of good quality. She definitely deserves this treatment. Maybe Rick said something about her. After thinking for a long time, she heard her name being called. It was the voice of that very one. Rick walked towards her in full dress, glowing with happiness. He was glad to see her. Smiling from ear to ear, he welcomed her to his estate as a pleasant guest. Lindsay rose from the sofa to greet his lordship. But suddenly he extended his hand to her so that it could mean something from him. He actually offered to give him his hand, and Lindsay agreed, holding it out. Kissing her tender hands, he said that he was waiting for the girl to come to him with impatience. He was very embarrassed. Nothing could brighten his day like Lindsay.